Don't move. The words left Alpha King Adrian Blackwood so quietly that Emily Carter almost wondered if she had imagined them. 1 second earlier, she had been crossing the moon court with a silver tray balanced between trembling hands, praying she could survive one royal feast without earning another joke about the clumsy maid. Then someone struck her shoulder from behind. Crystal chimed. The tray tilted. Her shoes slipped across polished marble, and instead of crashing to the floor before hundreds of nobles, Emily fell straight into the Alpha King's arms. The entire ballroom went silent. Adrian caught her effortlessly, one arm steady around her shoulders while the other stopped the falling tray before it could strike the floor. Emily's face burned with humiliation. Of all people, of all nights. Your Majesty, I'm so sorry. She tried to pull away. His hand tightened just enough to stop her. I said don't move. Emily froze. There was no anger in his voice. There was something stranger. Confusion. The most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories was staring at her as though the palace had vanished around them. His silver-gray eyes narrowed, searching her face. Emily could hear whispers spreading across the hall. She knew what they saw. A servant in a plain black dress being held by a king who barely tolerated nobles standing within arm's reach. Near the throne, Lady Victoria Hale lowered her jeweled glass. Head housekeeper Madeline Cross looked ready to faint. Emily swallowed. I didn't mean to touch you. I know. Adrian's answer came immediately. That frightened her more than anger would have. She tried again to step back, and something changed in his expression. His breath caught. For the briefest instant, his composure cracked, and Emily saw not a distant king, but a man startled by something he could not explain. Adrian had spent years mastering the restless wolf within him. Tonight, surrounded by hundreds of competing scents and voices, that hidden presence had been pacing beneath his skin since sunset. Yet the instant Emily fell against him, it became still. Completely still. Emily noticed his fingers tremble before he released the fallen tray to a nearby guard. Are you hurt? He asked. She shook her head. Just embarrassed. A faint sound of laughter came from somewhere behind her. Adrian lifted his gaze. The laughter died instantly. Emily wished the marble would open beneath her feet. Please, Your Majesty. I should return to work. She moved again, but dizziness swept through her so suddenly that the chandeliers blurred into streaks of gold. Adrian caught her before her knees weakened. His expression sharpened. Emily. Her heart stumbled. She had never told him her name. Then his gaze dropped to her hand. A faint reddish stain marked her fingers from the wine that had splashed when the tray fell. Adrian brought her hand closer, not touching the stain, only studying it. His face changed. The confusion disappeared. The king looked across the ballroom toward the shattered crystal near the servants' entrance, then back at Emily. When he spoke, his voice was low enough for her alone. Who touched your drink? Emily stared at the faint stain on her fingers, trying to understand the question. My drink, she whispered. Your Majesty, I was serving the wine. I was not drinking it. Adrian's eyes remained fixed on her hand. Around them, the moon court had begun breathing again, though conversation stayed hushed, and every curious face remained turned toward the king and the trembling maid in his arms. Emily wished she could disappear behind the servants' doors. She had spent nearly 2 years learning how to become invisible inside Blackwood Palace. Invisible servants survived. They carried trays, polished silver, changed linens, and remembered that nobles rarely noticed the hands making their comfortable lives possible. Emily had never been especially talented at invisibility. Whenever she became nervous, objects seemed determined to escape her. Cups slipped. Napkins fell. Once, she had walked directly into a decorative suit of armor while carrying fresh towels. Madeline Cross had called her Clumsy Emily ever since. Usually Emily could laugh quietly at herself afterward. Tonight was different. The warmth spreading through her body had begun before she crossed the ballroom. At first, she blamed the crowded hall. Nearly 300 guests filled the moon court beneath enormous crystal chandeliers, and every fireplace along the stone walls had been lit against the cool autumn night. But the dizziness had followed. Then the strange sensitivity to every sound, every scent, every movement around her. Emily had asked Madeline for permission to leave. During the King's Moon feast, Madeline had hissed, "You will finish your shift, Carter. Try not to drop anything important." So Emily had returned to the service corridor and collected another tray. That was when she noticed the glass. One crystal goblet among 12 carried a faint herbal scent beneath the wine, sweet at first, then strangely bitter. Emily had paused. She knew enough about palace rules to understand that servants did not question royal refreshments without good reason, but something about that glass felt wrong. She had been carrying it toward the senior steward when someone brushed past her near the ballroom entrance. Not a gentle accident, a deliberate shoulder against hers. The wine splashed across her fingers. "Someone bumped into me," Emily said suddenly. Adrian's attention sharpened. "Who?" "I do not know." I turned, but there were too many people. Her eyes moved toward the servants gathered near the doorway. Madeline stood among them, pale and rigid. Beyond her, Lady Victoria Hale watched from beside the throne, beautiful in silver silk, her expression carefully unreadable. Adrian lowered his voice. "Before you fell, did you notice anything unusual?" Emily hesitated, admitting that she had questioned royal wine could cost her position. Then another wave of dizziness rolled through her, and Adrian steadied her without hesitation. "The glass smelled strange," she confessed. "Like herbs. Maybe something floral. I thought I should tell the steward." Adrian became perfectly still. Emily saw Ethan Cole, commander of the Royal Guard, approaching through the crowd. The king met his eyes and gave the smallest nod. Ethan immediately turned toward the servants' entrance. "Your Majesty," Emily whispered, "am I in trouble?" Adrian looked down at her, and something unexpectedly gentle entered his expression. "No, Emily." His gaze shifted toward the broken crystal glittering across the marble floor. "I think you just prevented it. Nobody leaves the moon court." Adrian did not raise his voice, yet the command traveled through the ballroom faster than a shout. The musicians stopped. Conversations vanished. Ethan Cole reached the servants' entrance and quietly instructed the royal guards to close the doors while Emily remained beside the king, painfully aware that 300 people were now wondering how an ordinary maid had become the center of the evening. "Your Majesty, I can stand," she murmured. Adrian loosened his hold immediately, giving her room without moving far away. Emily managed one step, then two. On the third, the floor seemed to tilt beneath her. Heat rushed across her face, followed by a strange chill along her arms. She caught the edge of a nearby table before she could stumble again. Adrian was beside her instantly. "Emily, I am fine." Even she could hear how unconvincing that sounded. "You are not." His tone held no judgment, only certainty. That somehow made her stop pretending. Emily closed her eyes for a moment and concentrated on breathing. The ballroom smelled impossibly sharp now. Burning cedar from the fireplaces, beeswax from hundreds of candles, autumn roses from the centerpieces, wine, perfume, rain clinging to coats near the entrance. Beneath all of it was Adrian's scent, clean and cool like pine after the first frost. Strangely, focusing on it made the confusion inside her settle. When she opened her eyes, he was studying her with the same startled concentration. "What?" she asked. Adrian did not answer. Ethan returned carrying a white cloth wrapped carefully around a piece of broken crystal. "The glass was recovered," he said. "There is residue on it. The royal healer is on her way." Emily's stomach tightened. Was that glass meant for someone? Ethan glanced at Adrian before answering. The tray was prepared for the royal table. Emily looked toward the raised platform where Adrian's untouched place setting waited beneath the blackwood crest. Understanding arrived slowly, then all at once. "It was yours." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Possibly. Then I should have noticed sooner." "No," his answer was immediate. Emily blinked. "You were carrying 12 glasses through a crowded room while someone deliberately interfered with you. Whatever happened here is not your failure." The word struck somewhere unexpectedly deep. Emily had spent years apologizing for taking up space, for dropping things, for being slower than stronger wolves, for being an Omega servant in halls built for powerful people. Nobody had ever separated an accident from her worth so simply. A silver-haired woman entered through the side doors carrying a small leather case. Dr. Margaret Wells, the royal healer, crossed directly toward them. "Your hand," she told Emily gently. Emily offered it. Margaret examined the reddish stain without touching it, then leaned closer and inhaled carefully. Her expression changed. "Moonroot." Ethan went still. Adrian's eyes hardened. Emily knew the name only from old household warnings. "What does it do?" Margaret looked at her. "In small amounts, confusion, fever, heightened senses. Effects vary among wolves. Emily swallowed. Can you stop it? Yes. You are going to be all right. Relief nearly weakened her knees again. Margaret reached into her case, but paused when Emily instinctively moved closer to Adrian. The dizziness immediately eased. Margaret noticed. So did Ethan. Adrian slowly stepped 3 feet away. Emily's pulse suddenly raced, and the room blurred. He returned to her side. Calm followed almost instantly. Silence settled among the 4 of them. Margaret stared from Emily to Adrian. That, she whispered, is not the moon root. What do you mean? Emily asked, watching Dr. Margaret Wells with growing unease. Margaret did not answer immediately. She opened her leather case, removed a small glass bottle, and measured several drops into a cup of water. Drink this first. Slowly. Emily obeyed. The medicine tasted faintly of mint and something bitter, but within moments the uncomfortable warmth behind her eyes began to fade. Adrian remained beside her, close enough that she could sense his steady presence without feeling trapped by it. Margaret watched them. Both. Moonroot explains the dizziness and heightened senses, she finally said. It does not explain why her symptoms worsen when His Majesty moves away. Ethan folded his arms. Could the substance react differently around an alpha? Not like that. Margaret looked directly at Adrian. And it certainly does not explain your reaction. Emily turned toward him. Your reaction? For the first time that evening, Adrian seemed reluctant to answer. Ethan glanced toward the watching court. Perhaps this conversation should continue somewhere private. Adrian nodded. Clear the east drawing room. A ripple of whispers followed as the king escorted a servant away from his own feast. Emily kept her eyes forward, painfully conscious of Madeline staring from across the ballroom and Lady Victoria standing near the throne like a silver statue. 5 minutes later, the heavy oak doors of the drawing room closed behind Emily, Adrian, Margaret, and Ethan. The sudden quiet felt enormous. Emily sat on the edge of a velvet chair while Margaret checked her pulse. Better. A little. Good. The moonroot exposure appears limited. Emily released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Then once the medicine works, everything returns to normal? Margaret hesitated. Adrian walked toward the fireplace. He stopped roughly 6 feet from Emily. Almost immediately, the strange pressure returned beneath her ribs. Not pain exactly. More like an invisible thread being pulled too tight. She pressed a hand against her chest. Adrian turned at once. His own expression had changed. Come back, Margaret said quietly. Adrian crossed the room. The pressure disappeared before he even reached Emily's chair. Nobody spoke. Emily stared at Margaret. Please tell me what is happening. Margaret closed her case. I cannot tell you yet. I need evidence before I give this a name. Adrian's gaze remained on Emily. Then get the evidence. I will need blood records, family history, and a second examination after the moonroot has completely left her system. Emily almost laughed from nerves. My family history is not very impressive. My mother worked in a laundry. My father repaired farm equipment. Outside Cedar Ridge, I became a palace maid because the wages were better. Sometimes history hides in ordinary families, Margaret said. A knock interrupted them. Ethan opened the door just enough to speak with a guard outside. His expression became serious. What is it? Adrian asked. Ethan closed the door. We traced the tray. Emily sat straighter. And it was prepared in the West Service pantry, but someone changed the serving assignment 7 minutes before Emily entered the ballroom. Adrian's face became unreadable. Who changed it? We do not know yet. The written card is missing. Emily felt cold despite the fireplace. Then somebody knew where the tray was going. Ethan nodded. There is more. That particular tray was not originally assigned to the general royal table. His eyes shifted to Adrian. It was marked for the king alone. Emily looked at the faint stain still visible on her fingers. The room seemed suddenly much smaller. Adrian moved closer, his voice calm but absolute. Emily, until we know who arranged this, you are not returning to the servants' wing. Her eyes widened. Where am I supposed to go? Adrian held her gaze. Somewhere no one can reach you without going through me. I cannot stay in the royal wing. Emily heard the protest leave her mouth before she could stop it. Adrian stood across from her in the east drawing room, his expression composed, while Ethan seemed suddenly interested in examining the closed door. Why not? Adrian asked. Emily stared at him. Because I am a maid. That is your occupation, not a security arrangement. Under different circumstances, she might have smiled. Instead, Emily folded her hands tightly in her lap. People are already talking. If I disappear from the feast and spend the night near the king's rooms, they will invent explanations. Adrian understood immediately. His expression softened. Then you will stay in the Queen Mother's guest suite. Dr. Wells will remain nearby, and 2 female guards will be stationed outside. Relief loosened something inside Emily. He had listened. He had changed the arrangement without argument. Thank you. Adrian nodded as though her comfort were not a favor but a requirement. Ethan cleared his throat. There is something else. He placed a small cream-colored card on the table. We found this beneath a cabinet in the west pantry. Emily recognized the palace service markings immediately. Every tray prepared for a royal event received a destination card. Ethan pointed to the neat handwriting. King's private table, 8:45. Emily glanced toward the mantel clock. It was nearly 10. So the glass really was meant for him. Yes, Ethan said. And according to the kitchen staff, the tray was complete when it left the pantry. Adrian's voice became quiet, meaning whoever interfered with it did so afterward. Ethan nodded. Only 6 people had access to that corridor during those 7 minutes. Emily remembered the shoulder striking hers, the flash of dark fabric, the hurried footsteps disappearing behind a cluster of servants. She closed her eyes, searching the memory. There was a scent. Everyone looked at her. What kind? Ethan asked. Orange blossoms. Emily opened her eyes. Very strong. I noticed it because most servants are not allowed perfume during formal service. Ethan's expression changed. Correct. Adrian looked toward him. Who was wearing it? I saw several guests with floral perfume tonight. I will check. Another knock sounded. Ethan stepped into the hallway, leaving Emily with Adrian and Margaret. The healer checked Emily's pulse again. The medicine is working. Your heart rate is improving. Then perhaps His Majesty can move farther away now. Margaret gave Adrian a meaningful look. He crossed slowly toward the opposite side of the room. For feet. 6. 8. At roughly 10 feet, Emily felt that invisible tension return beneath her ribs. At the same moment, Adrian gripped the back of a chair. Margaret's eyes narrowed. Enough. Adrian returned. The sensation vanished. Emily looked from him to Margaret. That happened to both of us. Adrian finally answered the question she had been afraid to ask. Yes. His voice was softer now. It has happened every time I move away from you. Before Emily could respond, Ethan returned. We have a problem. Adrian turned. What happened? Someone entered the servants' wing after we sealed the ballroom. They searched Emily's room. Emily rose too quickly. My room. Nothing appears missing, Ethan said. Whoever went there was looking for something. A cold realization settled over her. The poison glass had been meant for Adrian, but now someone had searched her belongings. She was no longer merely the maid who happened to be nearby. She knew something the person responsible feared. Adrian stepped beside her, close enough for that strange calm to return. Ethan, double the guard. Already done. Emily looked up at Adrian. They know I noticed the glass. His silver-gray eyes held hers. Which means tonight was never about you. He paused as the meaning settled between them. But now they need you silent. They searched the wrong room. Dr. Margaret Wells spoke so suddenly that Emily turned toward her. The healer was staring at the small cream-colored service card Ethan had left on the table. What does that mean? Emily asked. Margaret closed her leather case. Whoever searched your room believes you carried something away from the ballroom. Perhaps a piece of the glass, perhaps evidence from the tray. They do not know Ethan recovered it first. Adrian's expression sharpened. Then we let them continue believing that. Emily understood before anyone explained. You want them to think I have evidence. Adrian looked at her immediately. No, I want whoever planned this to make another mistake. You will not be used as bait. The firmness in his voice surprised her. Kings gave orders. Servants obeyed. Yet Adrian sounded almost offended by the idea that her safety could be exchanged for convenience. Ethan returned to the room carrying an old leather ledger. Dr. Wells asked for employment records and family history. Palace archives found this. He placed the ledger before Margaret. Emily recognized her own name near the bottom of a yellowed page. Emily Carter. Cedar Ridge. Age 22. Omega. Beneath it were the names of her parents. Margaret traced the line beside Emily's mother, then stopped. Helen Carter was not her birth name. Emily leaned closer. What? Your mother entered palace employment briefly when she was 17. Her original family name was Bennett. Emily frowned. Her mother had never mentioned working at Blackwood Palace. Margaret turned several pages until she found an older entry. Then all color seemed to leave her face. Adrian noticed. Margaret. The healer looked at Emily. Your grandmother was Evelyn Bennett. I never knew my grandmother. Apparently, the palace did. Margaret carried the ledger toward the fireplace and held it beneath the brighter light. Beside Evelyn's name was a small crescent-shaped symbol drawn in faded blue ink. Adrian stepped closer. His composure changed the instant he saw it. Moonbound. Emily looked between them. What is Moonbound? Nobody answered quickly enough. Please, she said. Everyone has been speaking around me all night. I deserve to understand what is happening to me. Adrian's gaze softened. You do. Margaret nodded. Moonbound Omegas were an old bloodline associated with the earliest royal packs. They were known for an unusual ability to calm unstable alpha instincts. The line was believed to have disappeared generations ago. Emily almost laughed, but nothing about Margaret's face suggested a joke. My mother folded hotel linens. My father fixed tractors. I dropped drinking glasses for a living. I am not some legendary Omega. Bloodlines do not care about occupations, Margaret said gently. And this does not make you less ordinary than you wish to be. It only gives us another possibility to investigate. Adrian had gone unusually quiet. Emily turned toward him. You knew about them? Every Blackwood heir learns the history. He hesitated. There is more. Margaret gave him a warning look, but Emily caught it. Tell me. Adrian exhaled slowly. The last recorded Moonbound Omega was bonded to a Blackwood Alpha nearly 200 years ago. The room seemed to lose all sound. Emily became aware of the fire crackling behind her, the clock ticking on the mantel, and Adrian standing only a few feet away. So you think this is why we cannot separate? I think we know too little to decide anything tonight, Adrian said. And I will not let an old story decide who you are. The answer steadied her more than the medicine had. Margaret reached gently for Emily's wrist and checked her pulse once more. Then she frowned. Interesting. What? Emily asked. The moon root should still be affecting you. Margaret looked toward Adrian. But your pulse is almost normal. Adrian slowly stepped backward. At 8 feet, Emily felt the familiar pressure. At 12, it strengthened. Adrian immediately returned, and calm flowed through both of them. Margaret closed the ledger. The moon root did not create this connection. Her voice dropped almost to a whisper. It only woke up something that was already there. Then tell me what choice I actually have. Emily's question stopped the room. Margaret lowered her eyes to the ledger, and Ethan remained silent near the door, but Adrian did not look away. Every choice, he said. Emily searched his face for the command hidden beneath the answer. She found none. That cannot be true. You are the Alpha King. I am a palace maid. There is apparently some 200-year-old connection between our families, and I cannot walk 12 feet away from you without feeling like something inside me is being pulled apart. Where exactly is the choice in that? Adrian absorbed every word without interrupting. Then he reached for the blackened silver royal clasp at his collar. Emily stiffened as he removed it and placed it on the table between them. The Blackwood wolf gleamed in the firelight. That symbol gives me authority over every pack sworn to this crown, he said. It does not give me authority over you. Emily stared at him. Adrian continued, quieter now. There are old laws concerning Moonbound Omegas. Some would allow the crown to interpret this connection before either of us understands it. I will not use them. Margaret looked up sharply. Adrian, the council may insist on an examination of the bond. They can examine records. They can examine history. They will not examine Emily's freedom. Something in her chest tightened, but this time it was not the mysterious bond. All her life, stronger people had explained what was best for her. Madeline decided when she could rest. Supervisors decided when she had worked hard enough. Even well-meaning people spoke about Omegas as if gentleness meant helplessness. Yet the most powerful man in the kingdom was standing before her and refusing to make the easiest decision available to him. What if the bond is real? She asked. Then it is real. And if some ancient law says I belong beside you? Adrian's expression changed. You do not belong to me, Emily. The words were simple. They landed harder than any royal declaration could have. If you stand beside me someday, it will be because you walked there yourself. Silence followed. Emily glanced toward the royal clasp on the table. You really would let me leave? When Margaret says it is medically safe and Ethan says the immediate threat has passed, yes. Adrian paused. Even if I would rather you stayed. That last admission carried no demand. Somehow, that made it more powerful. Emily felt warmth rise behind her eyes and quickly looked toward the fireplace. You barely know me. I know you noticed something was wrong with a glass everyone else ignored. I know you tried to report it instead of pretending you had seen nothing. I know that after becoming ill yourself, your first concern was whether I had been the intended target. A faint softness entered his voice. And I know you apologize too often. Emily almost smiled. That last one is probably true. Definitely true. Ethan cleared his throat from the doorway. I hate to interrupt this surprisingly reasonable royal conversation, but we found something. He crossed the room and placed a folded sheet of paper beside the clasp. The staff assignments from tonight. Someone changed Emily's route before the feast. Emily leaned closer. Her name had been moved from the West Gallery to the royal floor. Beside the alteration was a familiar set of initials. Her breath caught. I know those. Adrian looked at her. Whose are they? Emily slowly raised her eyes toward him. Madeline Cross. Madeline changed my assignment. Emily heard the disbelief in her own voice. For 2 years, Madeline Cross had criticized her work, corrected her posture, and reminded her daily that palace servants were supposed to remain unnoticed. Yet tonight, Madeline had deliberately moved her onto the royal floor. Adrian studied the altered schedule. That proves she changed your route. It does not prove why. Emily nodded. She appreciated that he did not rush toward an accusation simply because Madeline had treated her poorly. Ethan pointed to another mark near the bottom of the page. There is a second authorization. Adrian recognized the seal immediately. Council office. Ethan nodded. Someone above Madeline approved the change. Emily looked toward the closed doors. Then ask her. We already did, Ethan said. She claims Councilman Richard Voss ordered the reassignment this afternoon. Adrian's expression cooled. Emily remembered Voss, a silver-haired advisor who had spent most of the moon feast beside Lady Victoria's father, smiling politely whenever Adrian looked his way. Why would a councilman care which maid carried wine? She asked. That, Adrian said, is what we are going to find out. Less than 20 minutes later, the moon court filled again. The guests had never been permitted to leave, and now uncertainty moved through the room like a cold draft. Emily stopped outside the doors. Her plain black servant dress suddenly felt painfully simple beside the gowns and formal suits beyond them. Adrian stood several feet away, respecting the distance she had chosen despite the discomfort it caused them both. You do not have to enter, he said. Emily looked at him. If I stay hidden, they will keep speaking for me. A small change touched his face. Pride, perhaps. Then I will stand wherever you want me. Emily drew a slow breath. Beside me. Adrian stepped forward. Together they entered. The whispers began immediately. Madeline stood near the servants' tables, pale and frightened. Lady Victoria remained beside her father, but when Emily looked at her, she saw confusion rather than guilt. Councilman Voss stood near the royal platform. Your Majesty, he began smoothly. Surely this spectacle is unnecessary. The servant became confused after accidentally contaminating a royal drink. There is no reason to disrupt the entire court. Emily's fear vanished beneath sudden clarity. He knew too much. Ethan had never publicly announced that the glass contained anything unusual. Adrian seemed to realize it at the same moment, but he remained silent. He let Emily speak. How did you know the drink was contaminated? Voss stopped. Hundreds of faces turned toward him. It was obvious from the commotion. Was it? Emily asked. Her hands trembled, but her voice did not. Dr. Wells examined me privately. Commander Cole recovered the glass privately. Nobody in this ballroom was told what she found. Voss glanced toward Adrian. This is absurd. You are allowing a maid to question a royal councilman. Adrian stepped down from the raised platform until he stood level with Emily. No, he said calmly. I am allowing a witness to finish speaking. Ethan placed the recovered service card beside the assignment sheet on a nearby table. Emily looked at Madeline. Did Councilman Voss tell you to move me to the royal floor? Madeline's eyes filled with fear. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she nodded. Yes. A murmur swept through the hall. He said Miss Carter was inexperienced enough that any mistake would appear accidental. Voss turned toward the doors, but 2 royal guards quietly stepped into his path. Adrian never raised his voice. Councilman Voss, you will remain here while Commander Cole completes his investigation. Emily released the breath trapped in her chest. Adrian looked toward her, but he did not claim the victory. He did not speak for her. He simply stood beside her while the court that had once overlooked the Clumsy Maid finally listened. By sunrise, Blackwood Palace felt like a different place. The moon feast had ended hours earlier. Councilman Richard Voss had been removed from royal duties pending a full investigation, and Madeline Cross had admitted that she changed Emily's assignment because Voss told her it was a direct council order. She had never known about the moon route. Lady Victoria Hale had known nothing either. What had looked like jealousy from across the ballroom had been simple shock at watching a king famous for keeping everyone at a distance suddenly refuse to abandon an unknown maid. Emily stood beneath the stone archway at the palace entrance, watching pale morning lights spread across the hills. Dr. Margaret Wells had examined her twice more. The moon route was gone. The strange connection to Adrian remained, but it no longer frightened Emily. Margaret believed the bond had awakened rather than been created, and there would be weeks of old records to study before anyone understood exactly what that meant. For Emily, one fact mattered more. Adrian had kept his promise. He had given her a choice. Your wages have been paid through the month, Ethan told her gently. A carriage can take you anywhere you wish. Emily smiled. Thank you. She carried one small suitcase. 2 years of palace life fit inside it with embarrassing ease. Adrian waited 20 feet away near the courtyard fountain. He wore no ceremonial cloak and no royal clasp. In the morning light, he looked less like the Alpha King and more like the man who had listened when she was afraid. Emily walked toward him. The invisible tension between them strengthened with every foot of distance she had crossed earlier, but neither mentioned it now. So this is goodbye? Adrian asked. His voice remained controlled, though his eyes betrayed him. You said I could leave. I did. And you are not going to stop me? A faint smile touched his mouth. I am trying very hard not to. Emily laughed softly. It might have been the first completely unguarded sound she had made all night. Then she walked past him. 5 feet. 10. 15. The pressure beneath her ribs returned, but she kept moving until she reached the courtyard gate. Adrian did not follow. That was when Emily finally understood what he had given her. Not freedom because some healer declared it. Not freedom because the law permitted it. Freedom because he respected her enough to endure watching her walk away. She stopped. For years, Emily had believed strength meant never dropping the tray, never making mistakes, never needing anyone. Adrian had shown her something different. Strength could be restraint. It could be gentleness when power made gentleness unnecessary. Emily turned around. Adrian was still exactly where she had left him. She walked back. Then, faster. His surprise appeared only for an instant before Emily reached him and wrapped her arms around him. Adrian went perfectly still. Emily, the first time was an accident, she whispered. His quiet laugh warmed the cool morning air. And this time, Emily looked up at him. This time I chose where I wanted to be. Adrian's expression softened. He held her carefully, without possession, without command, and Emily realized that was why she trusted him enough to stay. The palace bells began ringing behind them as sunlight spilled across Blackwood Valley. She was still Emily Carter, still occasionally clumsy, still stubbornly ordinary. Whatever the old Moonbound records eventually revealed, she would meet it as herself. Adrian lowered his forehead gently against hers. Welcome back, Emily. She smiled. I was gone for about 30 seconds. It was a very long 30 seconds. And beneath the brightening sky, she laughed again. If Emily and Adrian's story reminded you that real strength can be gentle and that love should always leave room for choice, please like this video, share it with someone who loves stories of courage and destiny, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this.